I do have something very important to say. And the Oscar goes to Michael B. Jordan.
Man, God is good. God is good. And yeah, mama, what's up?
You gotta be tapped into Black culture and Black history to be able to understand that.
But I think the cool thing about people like Ryan and the people like Michael, they're always looking for that next failure.
This is gonna be this, for the next 45 years.
2001: A Space Odyssey was not nominated for Best Picture. It is widely considered one of the 10 greatest films of all time. Now, however you get eyeballs onto it, oh, it's a horror film, oh, it's a vampire film, oh, it's a musical.
Will Sinners be viewed higher in 2040 than Django is in 2012 and 2026?
And we are here to talk about a wonderful year in film. 2025 culminated with the award season, including the BAFTAs and, of course, the Oscars. We're here to talk about the Oscars. We're going to talk about some marvelous technical achievements, which include Frankenstein, F1, Sinners. We're going to talk about Best Picture. We're going to talk about which one of these films might stick with us the longest, which ones we're going to be rewatching the most over the next year. Maybe we're going to talk about a little bit of snubs. How you doing, Swipa?
I'm great. This has been a really fun week of, sometimes like when award season's happening in film and, you're getting all the releases. I'm so excited about the content that's about to be dropped, whether it's just like on the Disney side with like, Mandalorian and everything. We got brand new seasons of like, Black Clover that are about to drop. We got the Dune preview this week too for the third installment. This was already such a highly contested like award season. And I just feel like next year we're going to be right back here with some great opportunities. So I'm honestly I'm so stoked.
There are some years where it feels like there's 2 to 3 really great contenders for all the top prizes. And some years it feels like, well, someone's got to win it. This year felt like there were some very strong contenders. Hamnet obviously could have swept up a lot of awards. I liked Marty Supreme a lot. Sinners blew my mind and took my heart away. There's a lot going on in the world. Obviously, films are not immune from politics. And someone asked us at the film festival this year, Pendance Film Festival, why do you think Iranian films are so good? I'm like, man, Iranian people have been through so much. So sometimes when things are going really badly in the world, rejoice. The art that comes out of it is going to be really good. Are there any themes that stuck out to you? And how did this year feel relatively from a competition field compared to other strong years?
And we're both in our 30s. And one of the first things that I noticed watching a lot of the ads that came up for like this year, and then even just looking through the award nominees for this season, everybody's like in their early or like late 30s that's like up for awards. Millennials are really like, we've really stepped into like the crowd. Like we're the ones telling the stories, we're the ones writing the stories, we're the ones doing the storytelling on the acting side. And we're gonna get into the awards, but Jessie Buckley, she's 36. Like I remember Jessie like back in the day, like when she was just like kind of just coming up on scene and just trying to like get relevant at all, and just some like more obscure projects she was doing. And then she comes into this season and just absolutely wipes everybody in the awards. I remember watching Michael B. Jordan, obviously, watching The Wire back in the day. He was on Sopranos, Jacob Elordi when he was in when he was just playing as like a kind of a cast off on a show that was featuring Zendaya. Like, he was a good character, but then to watch him to develop into what he's become as well, I just think that millennials we're stepping into like the prominence in the world at large. And obviously, just even, politically, like, you look at some of the leaders that are emerging in New York and some other places, like these are all people in their 30s. And to your point about what's happening in Iran, I have always said that when it comes to storytelling, people who have suffered and have gone through great tragedy and trials, they do storytelling better than anyone, because you have to remember good times. You have to remember the sorrow moments, but also you have to be able to tell your own story, because oftentimes the victor will dictate to you, hey, this is actually what's important in society. And so your story gets pushed to the side. But when you come from marginalized communities, those stories become a part of who you are and your self-identity. And you think of yourself as a collective, because we have endured this together. So whether it's Iran, whether it's Palestine, and, for me, Holocaust movies growing up were always super important. I remember watching The Schindler's List and just the imaging that I got out of the boy with striped pajamas. Like there was something to me that stood out about like, if you've gone through something tumultuous, then you can tell that story in a way that appeals to, I think, the hearts of humanity. And that means a lot to me. That's like, my first movie I ever fell in love with was Glory. and that was 1989 with Denzel Washington and Morgan Freeman. And like that movie grabbed me as a child and changed how I thought about myself and thought about life. So I think, to your point, man, the fact that we're getting so many great stories and so many of these like kind of like the Sundance like film festival independent films that we're getting out of these places like Iran, like that makes everything like that much more worthwhile, and why I think movies are so important.
Really strange sometimes in Hollywood, where you have people who don't have a lot of lived experience, who don't have a lot of diverse experience, and they try to pander to diversity. They try to relate to the everyman, but they've never really walked in those shoes. What's super cool about people like Ryan Coogler is they have. For so long, Hollywood has been like a gatekeeper of the ins and outs. And I think festivals like Sundance, obviously headed by Robert Redford, rest in peace, huge, loss to the film community because of what he championed and what he stood for, which was access to funding. You don't have Ryan Coogler without Forrest Whitaker.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have Michael B. Jordan without Forrest Whitaker. Do you know the story about how Ryan Coogler became a filmmaker?
He went to a school I was very familiar with in Sacramento State. So I only know a little bit because he was
as a football player.
Yeah, he was very
a football
young when
player.
He got started. Yeah,
he was a great football player. He had a writer's craft course in his first year, and he wrote this story about some debate or some beef that he had with his dad. And then he gets this message like, Ryan Coogler, please report to the, to the dean's office or whatever, or to the teacher's office. And he's thinking like he's in trouble. He's like, I'm showing up to this meeting. I'm thinking cops are there, like telling me I'm not supposed to do this and do that. And she just says, you should write movies. That one person at the right time to believe in you can shift your entire life. And it's so interesting because Ryan described later having a meeting with Michael B. Jordan. Now, this is when he had already secured the money for Fruitvale after the tragic passing of Oscar Grant. And so he gets into the first meeting with Michael B. Jordan. He knows everything with Michael at this point. Michael is the big star that he wants to attach to his movie.
Yeah.
And he recalled meeting him at the production office that Forrest Whitaker had set up for them for that movie. And they go across the street to Starbucks, where he sat across from Michael B. Jordan. He asked him what he wanted to do. He wanted to, he told him about the story, he told him about Fruitvale, he told him about Oscar Grant and everything. And he asked him like, what do you want to do? And Michael B. Jordan's talking about like how he wants to be doing this and that after television. And Ryan Coogler's like, I don't think this guy knows who he is. I don't think he knows. And he said, he's like, I think you're a great actor. And Michael B. Jordan will remember that moment. And he said, that's the first time anyone ever saw that in me. That's the first time anyone ever said it to me. That's the first time I ever saw it myself. So I think that so much of these stories are so much better than my dad's dad got me into it. It's cool. And it allows people to see their own lived in experiences, working class experiences, real life experiences, as opposed to the fake synthetic version of it. And I think Guillermo del Toro is another example. There's so many people who have driven access through their talent. And I think that's what anyone in the film industry has ever wanted, which is a fair playing field where if I'm talented enough, if I drive myself hard enough, if I work hard enough, that I could actually break through this glass ceiling. So I want to talk about like the act of going to the cinema. Now, this is a shocking statistic. Do you know that 62.5% of the Oscar winners from the 24 categories did not go to a single film festival?
Wow.
That is shocking. If I said this stat 5 years ago, TIFF did not get a single one of them as a world premiere. What is the importance to you for going to see 65 millimeter IMAX, going to the cinema, sitting there, engaging with this stuff?
I always tell people that it was the 2018, 2019 era of Marvel. And it's when, we already seen Infinity Wars, and then Endgame came out. And I remember I saw Endgame basically the night that it dropped on a Friday. And I remember going to the theater, and I remember there's been this buildup since 2012 when the first Avengers movies dropped. And, again, the movies are a collective experience. We've all at this point have been Iron Man when it all started, the Hulk back in the day when the Hulk movies weren't good, to Thor, Dark World. Like, we're all on this journey. And then Black Panther came out 2018. So, there's so much hype around Endgame at this point. And we know Thanos is the man. And I remember being in the theater, and brother, when Captain America, when he picked up the hammer, that was a whole experience for the crowd. Everybody was like just in an uproar. But when Cap had a broken shield, and then he heard on his microphone like on your left, I remember the entire theater erupted, and including me, who I'm, it's talked about like in Black communities. Obviously, when we go to movies, we talk, especially scary movies. Like we talk to the screen, but I don't typically, outside of like if we're in a scary movie, I don't typically do that. So I'm watching this movie, and then all of a sudden this happened. Everybody's just clapping and celebrating. I think there's so much good that comes out of human beings sitting down in a chair together, 70, 100, 300 people, watching a story, going on a journey together, experiencing sorrow and loss and triumph together, and then walking out of that, I think partially changed. Because, man, I really harp on anthropology a lot. And if you think about human history, the best form of communication between human beings has always been storytelling. We've been storytelling since we were writing on walls in caves, just telling stories of the past, or just telling stories about the future we hope that we're going to see. And I think movies are central to how we connect with each other. So I think it is imperative that movies exist. It's imperative that the movie avenue continues to exist and flourish, because, as you say, Michael B. Jordan, this kid from Jersey that becomes everything he's becoming, well, it's the screen that allows for him to have access to this dream. Ryan Coogler is the screen that allows him to have access to this dream. And so for me, movies are central to our experience. And I think the reason why movies have been so diminished amongst like the populace in a lot of ways is because there are a lot of silly projects that don't really mean much, that, could obviously it's about making money at the end of the day. But I think there are so many good projects and there's so many important stories to tell, especially when you have original works like we got this year. There's just nothing that can replace it. There's nothing that can replace the amount of time someone takes writing a script, going over a screenplay, and then having to like act that story out and then connecting all the pieces by the end. It's honestly like, it's cathartic. Like it's almost nothing else I can describe like it.
I think so much of our content appetite is derived through algorithms, echo chambers. We're trying to optimize everything for control because apps are fighting for our attention. YouTube is fighting with Netflix, is fighting with Amazon. And if you're on that app, that means they have your attention, which means they have your ad dollars. I think the cinema presents a counterpoint to that, which is you lose control. You don't get to walk out. I mean, you could, it's rude, but you just kind of have to surrender yourself to the director for an hour and a half. And it's cool, man. And I think so many movies right now, they call it like dual screening. So they're writing movies assuming that you're scrolling your phone while you're watching the movie. I hate this, man. I understand it's the times, but I absolutely hate it. In 2017, we launched the Pendance Film Festival. There were 380 people there. And we had an intermission between a block of shorts. And people go out and I've been to so many film festivals where the conversation is like, so what's your next project? What are you doing? Whatever. But Swipa, the films were so good. People were just discussing scenes, and they were having these conversations that were completely distinct from any conversation they'd had before because they'd never seen these films before. And I was like, what a beautiful thing. Let's do this bigger. Let's do this better. Let's do this forever. Let's do this for the next 50 years. Because I love this idea of people coming out and discussing things that they've never thought to discuss before. And great films have the power, I've always believed this, to change lives, change perspectives. Because if a great film truly hypnotizes you through music, dialogue, story, whatever, then in that moment, your brain is open in a way that it's not usually open. It's like hypnosis. And something can come into you that couldn't have come into you before. You can walk out of it changed. I've listened to so many people tell me this film changed my life. Shawshank changed my life. Jurassic Park changed my life. Jaws changed my life. Fruitvale changed my life. It's just like, and I remember Ryan Coogler was a mess. Not to always bring things back to Ryan Coogler, but he is one of my favorite directors. And he was a mess before the world premiere of Fruitvale Station, right? Because he's just like, oh, I fucked this up. I know I fucked this up somehow. And Oscar Grant's entire family was at the screening at the world premiere of Sundance. And Ryan is just like a wreck. And he comes out of that screening, and Oscar Grant's uncle stands up and he says, it felt like I just watched my nephew for an hour and a half on the screen. And I didn't think that was going to be possible ever again. And I was like, holy shit, that's the power of this thing. It's so amazing. But there is something that is maybe in the way of it, and that is AI. A huge controversy and a huge talking point in cinema. AI generated stuff. It was a topic at Pendance this year as well.
Mhm.
There's definitely an idealistic version of this that says it gives independent content creators Hollywood access, in terms of big budget stuff. Then again, as a film professional, someone who works in the film, it's putting a lot of my friends out of work. You're looking at like TikTok stuff. This stuff, it feels hollow and empty. So I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on AI.
Look, I think that this whole idea that AI has to be used. I mean, I understand it because we're living in a world where this is the world we live in, and this is where we're headed. So, what is the next step of that? The next step is how do we optimize AI to serve our purposes rather than to take away from human ingenuity? And this is not just obviously in film. This exists everywhere. We face this on the sports side where there are companies that have literally fired writers and then just simply hired AI users to create content on the behalf of these companies, and you can see it and you can read it, and they'll have to say that this is where this is coming from, but it just takes, to your point, the soul out of it. It takes the passion out of it. It takes the compassion out of all the storytelling. I think for me, it's just there's something with doing film and movies that even the flaws are a part of what makes it special. And I think automating the process, especially when it comes to what they're talking about and what a lot of people that are advocating for this or doing this for, a lot of this has to do with script writing, a lot of this has to do with the visual effects, and then it has to do with like just audio editing. But even that, it's like, number one, you're taking jobs away from human beings to do that work. But then number two, there's still something you cannot replace. For like, if you're doing a script, for instance, and you're telling a story about like how this person's supposed to get from this point to this point, when you're getting to a climax, when you're getting to a place in the story where there's a trauma or tragedy, like now the machine can be predictive and like, okay, this is where this goes. But for me, it's like the human element of story or storytelling there is still necessary for that process. And I think even using it for editing, like I started using AI a little bit, like in some of my writing about like current event stuff, but on like more proofreading stuff. But I don't ever go further than that, just because for me, like, I know that I need to make sure that I'm fully engaged with the work and the process. Now, if this is something that I can be fixed like linguistically, like on the other side of this and saying, hey, I could have said this better here, then I think that's fine. We've always have tried to use multiple points of view to enhance our language and enhance what we're doing.
I think the toll that it takes on the environment is pretty insane. Like, I
Yeah.
think every question you ask ChatGPT is about a spoon of water.
Yeah.
But if you start going into video generation, we're talking buckets and buckets of water, and we don't got a lot of water in this world. So I think people have to be pretty careful about that. But also, I think there is a social soul kind of toll to it. There's certain works you read very early in life that kind of shape your perspective, especially if you catch it at the right time. One of those things was Bowling Alone by Robert Putnam. That to me was just like a very depressing view of a very depressing future where people just don't want to hang out with other people anymore. And sometimes you see it with the next generation coming up. As you mentioned earlier, we're in our mid 30s, but sometimes you meet some of these teenagers and they don't even know how to interact with human beings. Like, they'll meet a human being in real life. And they don't even know how to shake hands. They don't know how to do anything because they've been interacting with screens their whole lives. And I think to the point of AI trying to perfect everything, so many of the greatest films are not great because of their perfections, but rather their imperfections.
Mm-hmm.
And one film that always comes to mind is Jaws. That film is exactly what it is because that shark did not work.
Mm-hmm.
That shark barely worked. And because it barely worked, in a creature feature, the $1 million shot is the shark, right? But they could barely ever show the shark because and even in Jurassic Park, when you think about like the initial Jurassic Park, because I think Steven Spielberg is such a master. You mentioned Schindler's List, but like, a lot of people know him for, Jurassic Park and Jaws and stuff. When you think about how long do we go before we see that T-Rex? The buildup, the anticipation, we talk about it. You have a T-Rex? Say, my God, you have a T-Rex. Say it again. And it's like we don't see the T-Rex for another 30 minutes after that. The awe, the wonder, but a lot of it comes from like the craftsmanship, the innovation, the love that goes into it, but also the imperfections.
Yeah.
And I think trying to take imperfections out, trying to get every shadow to look just right, it doesn't look right because that's not what our lives look like. And sometimes the coolest thing about films is how much they reflect the real life that we live. and AI does not reflect the life that I live because nothing looks that perfect. Nothing drives exactly 60 kilometers an hour at all times. What is the best film you watched all year? This is a tough question, but I'm curious. Like, what was the best? It doesn't have to be something that was nominated for an Oscar. It could be literally something you just caught that was made in 1972. But curious, what's the
Best
best
film
film
I
you
watched
watched?
in 2025.
What's the best film you watched in the last 12 months?
That is extremely tough, man. I'm just trying to even look through a list that I have of like what was something that I would even consider in that category. I mean, Sinners. It's probably close to one, if not one. One Battle After Another for me was just terrific. I love that movie. Trying to think, man. Past Lives was incredible. I love that movie. I mean, that movie was like, in terms of just like a romantic movie and just like the desiring of two individual people that had longed for each other for over a decade, but they still, even in the end, couldn't like actually like do what they wanted to do with their love. And then, watching how adults have to deal with like a disappointment and a loss and a grief while also being in relationships. I thought that was incredible. Iron Claw was another one that I actually had finally spent time watching. I want to give a lot of credit to Dwayne Johnson, the Smashing Machine. I was very, very surprised with how good he did in that movie. Now, the movie itself wasn't brilliant, but I think that he did a great job. Obviously, Emily Blunt. But I'm gonna have to go. Everything included, I'll probably say Sinners. I know that's probably a little bit too much of a popular answer, but somebody who was on the train early and saw it immediately, I just thought that from start to finish, that story was phenomenal. But like I said, One Battle After Another, it wasn't that far off for me.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely Sinners. But and I'll give a shout out to The Wailing. It's a 2016 horror film. I don't know if you've seen it, but man, if you're willing to engage with this film, the payoff is rich. It is one of the greatest films I've seen in my life.
Sorry, Pen, I didn't mention Eternity. Did you see Eternity?
No.
Okay. Eternity, by the way, whoever does end up watching this, that was a phenomenal movie with Callum Turner, Elizabeth Olsen, and Miles Teller. They basically it's a playoff on the Kevin Kline movie from way back in the day. When you die and you go to heaven, you view your life. This one was essentially about like a woman that's married to a man for 40, 50 years, but the person that she had married originally who died in war, when they all got to purgatory, she was able to see her first love. And so the journey was about who she was going to spend her eternity with. That was also phenomenal and a great movie.
Eternity. I'm going to check that out. Yeah. I think Sinners, to me, like, first of all, I didn't watch it for a really long time, which is my bad. I don't know what the hell I was doing for the entire year, but I wish I'd watched it earlier. I think it's because I heard it was a vampire movie, and it's not. I mean, it is, but it's not. And I wish I knew what it was actually about because I would have checked it out like IMAX day one. But when I watched it, I remember I watched it with my girlfriend, and I very sadly watched it at home. That's the biggest travesty. And I remember about 3 cuts into that film, my girlfriend asked me a question, and I paused the film and I restarted it. And I said, this is one of those films where there's going to be no talking.
That's hilarious.
Like I was dead serious. I was like, okay, Ryan Coogler, first 3 cuts are in. I usually can tell if the film is going to be a masterpiece within the first 3 cuts, maximum 5 cuts. I know if I'm in the best of hands or the worst of hands, and obviously with Ryan, I know the type of filmmaker he is. And I'd heard a lot of the buzz around it, but I don't trust buzz. So I watched it for myself, and I got to tell you, there were very few films that have left me completely speechless at the end credits. And that was one of those films. And then, of course, the post-credits roll just is another complete mind fuck. God, that film.
That was great.
That film, and the beautiful thing about that film is it shares a lot in common with some of my favorite films of all time. No Country for Old Men, 4 Months, 3 Weeks, 2 Days, Irreversible, A Separation by Ashghar Farhadi, which is the film plants like 150 seeds in your mind while you're watching it. They blossom weeks, months, and years later. This is a film that just keeps on giving. I think a lot of people that I'd listened to talk to about it, because I know it was a big topic of conversation at Pendance, and I know we talked about it with a lot of people. It was astonishing to me the number of people I had talked to that loved it for completely different reasons.
Hmm.
Some people loved it because of the musical number. Some people loved it because of cinematography. Some people just loved it because it was just this really cool, thoughtful horror film. Some people loved it without even understanding even 10% of what it was actually aiming at. But as somebody who has, done a lot of digging in history and who grew up in the United States and knows a lot about Black history, not as much as you, obviously. I've listened to you talk about it. It hammers home so many things. And I remember the first thing that I eventually said after my 4 minutes of speechless silence after it was I looked at my girlfriend and I said, I don't know how this film exists. I don't know how they let them make it.
Mm.
Like, a film like this is like truly indie, but it provokes so many thoughts. And I thought to myself, if people really understood what this was about, like, this is the type of film that can change the world.
Mm.
And that's like, I'm not even glazing it. Like, just how I felt after watching it. So it was definitely the best film that I watched. The film was celebrated with 16 Oscar nominations,
incredible,
which is a record. What were your thoughts of the 3+ hour Oscar functions, Oscar function overview? Good, bad, and ugly. Let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. What was the good? What was the bad? And what was the ugly?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm pretty, like, in my personality, I've really learned over time that I have a very first positive view of things and people typically, and then, like, you have to prove me wrong on the other side, that you're like, I expect the worst, but, like, I'm gonna assume that, like, this is gonna be a positive interaction. And so I assumed that, like, I'm watching all the categories and the nominations previously, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, I mean, I don't know who's going to win a lot of this. I did a little prediction on Twitter of what I thought the outcome was going to be. But what happened was, when they went into, like, costume design and cinematography and directing and documentary and film editing, when they were putting up the nominees and clips from the movies, I was just literally befuddled. And I was so happy that the competition in this field was as fierce as it was, because I also thought Marty Supreme was a great movie. I thought F1 was a great movie. Between those two movies, they won one Oscar. One. I thought that Sinners and Frankenstein and One Battle After Another and Hamnet, those were all movies that were made with distinctly different tones and types and shots and purposes. And then even when you look at, like, just even Avatar last year for costume design, every time they would play something, I was thoroughly impressed with how things were rolling out. And this is how you also know, like, as a sign of a healthy award season, and a sign that the movies that you're watching this is like a generational or a very, very great year for film. Is in most other years, Begonia would have walked, because Begonia is a great movie, and Emma Stone, I think, possibly is the best actor, male or female, in the world, pound for pound. I think I can make a legitimate argument she's the best storyteller in the world, that she can do anything from rom-com to drama to tragedy to deep storytelling to aliens to anything you want. She could walk on a movie. You give her 3 months for a prep, and she could give you the best job you've ever seen. Shakespeare, Broadway, on stage, whatever. That's obviously my opinion. There's a lot of great actors. She was phenomenal. She didn't even come close to getting, and I thought that she might win. She didn't even come close to getting, like, best actress. And I just think that speaks to the level of talent that we had in the field this year, and that it was just as deep and as broad as it was. I just thought so many people did such a great job, like, I think, telling the story, writing the stories, and then playing it out on paper and on film for everybody.
Yeah, I thought Rose Byrne was going to win it for Best Actress.
Yeah, that's close.
She was incredible, and to the point of, like, the cool thing about running a film festival is you get to see the smaller works that these people participate in as well. So I got to see Rose Byrne in Shark. It was a short movie, short film that we programmed 3 years ago, and I got to see Yorgos Lanthimos in a film that we programmed in 2020 called Mimic. So it's really interesting to see the work. Sometimes really prominent directors, even big time directors, will do a 16-minute film. Sometimes they'll do a feature. We had a Werner Herzog feature at Pendance in 2020 as well. So it's very interesting. But that being said, the good, the bad, and the ugly of the Oscars, like the good is obviously the celebration of art, right?
Yeah.
I think if I had to say like the good, I have to say the good was to see um, the reception and the camaraderie and the love uh, that Michael B. Jordan got. That was to me the most pitch perfect, tone perfect acceptance speech. Thank God, thanked his parents, thanked his family for coming out. He was real, he was authentic, there was nothing scripted about it. He thanked every actor that came before him, thanked the lineage, the didn't make it about himself. In all honesty, the only departments that are one department awards are actor and supporting actor. Every other department, it's like a 50 million people, best picture, even screenwriting sometimes is like you have a script writer, but then you have like people who proofread and stuff like that. So to me, like the best actor award going to a person who made it about everybody else in that moment, talking about, people betting on him. And then afterwards, there's this beautiful clip that somebody captured of him crying into Leo's shoulder, which was his best actor nominee. And it felt like everyone was genuinely happy for him to win it because, he's just a really good dude. So I thought that was just such a great moment because sometimes the Oscars, I'm gonna be honest, that Will Smith one, that did not sit right with me.
No, I haven't. I have, it's so bad that to your point when you said you didn't watch Sinners, I was waiting to watch his movie that he won for when he would
King Richard.
King Richard, when he was playing it was like a reenactment obviously of Serena and Venus and playing the father. I was waiting to watch it, and then when he won, I was so lost in what he had just done that I literally blanked from my mind that he won best actor that year. Completely blanked from my mind.
It was so disappointing. I mean, it's so disappointing because, what Denzel said after about that, he said is like when you're at your highest, that's when the devil comes for you.
Yeah.
And I was just like, man, and then the best way that Denzel captured that is like the devil got him that night.
Yeah.
The devil just came for him that night. And I just think like it was so different to watch this. Watched a lot of best actor speeches. I think this is one of the best ones I've ever seen in my life. And it was just so great again to see the community coming to him and being with him in that moment. The bad is obviously, some of the skits, they don't land, they're overlong. And the ugly is just, I think, the K-pop, people getting cut off mid-speech.
That was yeah.
I really hated that for them because, you work your whole life for this moment, right? To get up on stage. You might never get up there again. I have a friend who won an Oscar in 2012. He has never been nominated again. So this might be the one-off. Everyone ain't going to be, Paul Thomas Anderson. They're not going to get 14 nods, right? So for some people, this is it. This is the moment that they've worked their whole lives for. And to cut them off when they would have probably gone 30 seconds over just to thank their mom, their dad, whoever, you don't know. It has to be just so classless to do that. And I think they did it a couple times where they lowered the mic on somebody who was trying to thank. It's just like, like y'all can cut so many of the ads away. Like for one night, can we just make this about what it's about, which is the art? And I think that the reason that good moment was the Michael B. Jordan thing is because in that moment, it was 100% about the art. It's 100% about the art. So
they adjusted their strategy and not just the dimming the lights, not just the music, but then also lowering the mic as a whole. So basically taking away any opportunity for you to go on these extended runs. I definitely understand the programming, obviously on the other side, like somebody who works in the, programming of shows and this and that, like you do have to have a structure, but to your point, well, you can get rid of some of the fluff and then you can make it more about like, hey, this is actually a night of celebration for the people that have done the work. So let's like make it that. And to your point about the K-pop stuff, again, if people aren't cartoon people, then whatever, then that's fine. But K-pop Demon Slayer for me, and I've really been trying to just shout this from the mountains, was one of the best movies I've seen in I don't know how long. I thought that from every way they handled it, from the artistic work, the plot, we've moved away, Penn, really in the big one, that the first one we moved away from like the heroism, man saves woman typography was Frozen, when instead of her, she fell in love, but then she fell in love with the man that saved her sister. It was her. You know, it was just between two family members. And then we've kind of moved into this idea that, like, especially for women characters, we want to make sure that, like, they're not overly reliant on male. And in K-pop Demon Hunters, you know, you get to a point where the main person, the protagonist, finds out that she's not as perfect as she once thought, and that she's actually like a demon, half demon. And so the whole idea of the movie is like there's this massive critical point. Her friends leave her, everybody leaves her, she might become evil, the demon falls in love with her, she falls in love with the demon, but they both want to be free and broken from their chain. And then at the end of the movie, you get this idea of acceptance of, I have good and bad, but the bad parts about me don't have to tell the story. The bad parts can just be about how I use them moving forward. And I love stuff like that because no one is perfect. And I love, that's why one reason too, Penn, I love stories that tell the viewpoint from the antagonist side, because most antagonists have legitimate reasons why they become antagonists, but it's just about how they respond at the end of the story and what they end up becoming that I think changes a lot of that for them.
So did you like Joaquin Phoenix's Joker?
Of course. I mean, now that's frustrating though, because, and again, from a personal standpoint, I have a really big heart for people that are like on the spectrum from a mental health standpoint, like literally, like legitimately mental health. Like he legitimately had issues. Like remember the card scene where he handed to the mother, where he said that like, hey, sometimes I laugh when I'm super uncomfortable, and then they bullied him. I thought that was so terrible. I was like, but he's right. Like society will treat people, if you're broke, if you're not conventionally attractive, if you don't play sports, if you're not adding to society in some high-end traditional way, then yeah, you just get thrown to the dirt. And the whole movie was this idea. The only reason he became what he became, which he didn't actually become like the Joker per se, was because the way he was being treated at large. And he just wanted acceptance. And he also had this idea that, you know, Bruce Wayne's father was his father. And so there was a lot that went into that. But I do think that's another example of someone and why that story resonated with so many people, because a lot of people feel like they're not a part of the consensus. They're not a part of the populace, and they're being rejected by society. But then obviously you can go too far where you become a vigilante and you're hurting people, and you're obviously like trying to bring down systems and government that's not going to benefit anybody. So there's degrees to which how far you can go on those things. But I thought Joker was another one of those. It was an excellent mate. The first one especially was an excellent movie.
Okay, biggest snubs, man. We got to talk about the biggest 2-3 snubs. I mean, if you don't have any snubs, that's cool. But were there any snubs where you were like, that for sure, I think they got wrong?
Man, you know, it's tough because I think the biggest one that we can talk about is director. So here's the thing.
Okay.
Paul Thomas Anderson is a GOAT himself. His like resume is ridiculous. And he has done some of the best films that we've seen in the last 25 years. I mean, There Will Be Blood. Daniel Day-Lewis was like brilliant in that movie. Paul Thomas Anderson film. You know, Magnolia is one of the craziest movies that has come out in the last 20 something years, to where we're still really like coming to terms with just how in depth that movie was. And that was Tom Cruise's best film that I think he's ever done. Paul Thomas Anderson, you know, and I think if you just even look at some of the other stuff that he's done, like he is just great. Yeah, like all of it. Like, I mean, you know, you could go up and down the resume with him. It's all great. I think Paul Thomas Anderson, when I saw One Battle After Another, I'm gonna tell you this is exactly what hit through my head, Penn. I saw Sinners first. I said, this is winning. Ryan Coogler is winning. This is it. He's like, this is the Jokic in 2025 December, the NBA. Oh, it's his. He's averaging 30-point triple-double, whatever. Nobody's beating him. And then One Battle After Another, that was SGA, where out of nowhere, it's just like, oh, here comes Leonardo DiCaprio, Regina Hall, Benicio del Toro. What is this? Like Tiana Taylor, Sean Penn. And then it's about a revolution. First off, that fits right in with my DNA. Like, Viva la Revolution! Like it went straight there. And then you had the hiding, you had the pacing, you had the shots. And then, brother, when the highway scene dropped, Penn, I remember watching that in theater. It was like a 20-minute scene purely on the highway, and you got a chance to watch Chase Infinity in her first real movie, just put on an absolute stunner for the audience, and then to have the reconciliation that from the start of the movie to the end of the movie was about Leo finding his daughter. And in that process, man, I just thought from the actors' choices to the script to the lighting to the beauty, I honestly looked at it and said, I would not be shocked if he won. I got to the day of the Oscars and I wanted Ryan Coogler to win it for several different reasons, and especially some of the stuff we'll talk about here in a minute. But man, a snub, that's just hard to say a snub when like they were both, to me, the preeminent movies of the season.
I think I have 3 snubs. Honestly, I have probably 4 snubs. I'm gonna go with Best Picture. I think Sinners was the best picture for sure. I think one category at least, and I can't figure out which, Marty Supreme should have won. I don't believe Marty Supreme should go 0 for 9. I feel like a lot of people who watch that film, like I talked to my girlfriend after she watched that film, and she was like explaining to me like how Marty is so unlikable. And I started explaining to her like some of the deeper points of that. Like, for instance, you may not know this. The last name Mauser. You know where they came up with that?
No.
So German for mouse, right? And what was Nazi propaganda was that Jews were mice and that Germans were cats. And so this Mauser character and how he is shaped by everybody, that's not even the real character's name. They named it, Mauser for that reason. And I thought Timothée Chalamet was incredible in that, right? Like if there was anybody who was going to win it over Michael B. Jordan, I was like, let it be him. But then he talked about the ballet and the opera, and it was curtains, dating a Kardashian and talking about that. Yeah, you're done. But I was really happy for Michael B. Jordan. I think best picture for sure, Sinners. Best casting. This new category. How does this not go to Sinners? This was disgusting. This is the one that got me really up in arms.
Do you think they had a better cast in One Battle After Another in totality?
But it's not best cast. It's best casting.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. Like best casting. Yeah. I think the Chase Infinity thing, like in Tiana, that probably was the thing that put them over. It's not that Tiana's not a known actress, but she's not a known premier actress. But she went in the film and she was obviously glorious. And then Chase, I think, also sold the story in so many ways.
I think the innovation of having Delroy Lindo, as Delta Slim, having Michael B. Jordan as this perfect cast, which of course, having Haley Steinfeld, discovering Miles Catton the way that they did, and just his incredible prominence. Even some of the side characters, if you will, right? Like not side characters, but Wunmi Masaku is just a revelation, right? She was actually the producer on one of the films that we had at Pendance this year, which was like such a cool thing to see. I just thought to pull together this perfect ensemble of individuals to tell this incredible story, and a lot of these people had not been recognized on this level before. Sean Penn has, Leo has. These are A-list actors. These are big time lead actors. You have 3 lead actors. Even Tiana has been like a lead actress in things before. I think. Have you seen anything with Lee before? I haven't.
I'm trying to think. Let me go through her filmography real quick.
I mean, I'm sure I've seen her, but like a lot of these people, even like the creative use of Omar Benson Miller, right? Like I thought his casting was just incredible and perfect, and it's just like everybody just hit their notes perfectly. And to me, as someone who has sat in a casting chair and tried to figure out what actor is best for my role, it's not always the biggest actor. It's not always the best. It's like if I can't imagine anybody other than Michael B. Jordan doing that role, right? And so to find the needle in the haystack, to find every one of these characters exactly as they did, to me, it's like you're going to invent this new Oscar category and then give it to the wrong candidate. That did not sit right with me. And best director, I'm perfectly fine with it. It's cool, like, knowing a little bit about Ryan Coogler. I'm sure that he is just much, much more happy to see Michael B. Jordan and Autumn be celebrated. Sinners doesn't have to sweep the whole Oscars. So I'm perfectly fine with the best. I think best actress, again, I like Jessie Buckley. I think she's incredible. I think, she's her filmography is just getting better and better. But I would have given it to Rose Byrne. That's just where I'm at. Those are my snubs.
Yeah, I think the issue is so Benicio del Toro, he was on the screen for 13 minutes of that film, and it felt like way more. And the minutes he was on the film were so impactful. And then Chase Infinity was 31 minutes, Leonardo was 55, Sean Penn was 33, Tiana Taylor was 19, Regina Hall was 8. Like, yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Like, I don't think look, Sinners, if it would have won, like, I definitely would not have complained about it at all, and I wouldn't have. And I was actually, and again, I'm obviously a huge Cougar fan and a Jordan fan, so if that would have happened, I think I'd have been more than okay, more than happy with it. I just think that when the cast was announced for one battle after another, it just felt like they just had so much momentum. Like they had a tier 1 actor in Benicio who can carry movies all by himself as like a legitimately obscure, like secondary actor who just dominated when he was there. And I think Regina Hall's inclusion, and again, it's really very separate parts, from finding Chase Infinity's character in the bathroom to then getting picked up by the police in the end. Like the way she was able to carry the screen through the tears and through passion and through dread and through trauma and through pain was terrific. And then Sean Penn playing this extremely off-kilt character who was clearly racist, who clearly had a lot of mental issues, who had control issues, who was then somehow working with this white supremacist organization. He wanted to align himself with the most powerful people in the world, to the way that he was killed at the end of the movie. And then I think for Leonardo DiCaprio, like, I just think he carried that plot so well, from being like this kind of bummish former revolutionary leader who fell in love with a woman and then ended up having to raise his daughter by himself, but it was still like not fully, I think, grown up in some extent until he get to the end of the movie. Then like just even like the dress and the wear, and again, he carried so much of the pacing of the movie as well. I that's why for me, I was just kind of like, I wasn't upset about it. It just felt like they just had all the momentum going into it. But like I said, the one that I was like kind of just hoping more for was the director. I just think Ryan Coogler, I just think he did such a fabulous job with such a unique storytelling. And I know a lot of the criticism, which is not from legitimate sources, by the way, a lot of these are like a lot of racist people who are like haters on Sinners. They're saying, well, this is just From a Dusk Till Dawn. Like, it's just the same storytelling and all that kind of stuff. Like, no, actually, it's completely different. This is a brand new story. Like, we've never seen anything like this before. It's set in 1932, and you have this, like, these twins that moved to Chicago that robbed these people and then went back to their hometown. They had one night where they built a juke joint, and then the juke joint was infested by these very complicated vampires who were both evil and bad, but also like, hey, these white people are trying to kill you anyway. Just join our family. You join our family, we're going to take over the town. Matter of fact, anybody that joins our family, we'll make sure that you never have to worry about being afraid again. And then to the point, Penn, they then, at the end of the movie, this is why directors are so important, which is why I think you should have won. Penn, how many times have you seen a great movie and they don't finish the story? Or they leave like certain characters unanswered, like what happened to them or where were they? At the end of the movie, the fact that you have to sit through the credits and it's like, oh, there they go. Like, so they didn't just leave into the night and then we never saw them again. We ended up seeing them at the end, and then they're vampires, but they're like, they have enough of their humanity left to be able to recognize that like their nephew was thriving and doing well. So I just thought that was just such a terrific job from start to finish from Ryan Coogler.
I think the reason that I could see Ryan getting snubbed for best director is because I think he had a solid script. He was working off a solid script with a great cinematographer, great cast, great crew, great everything. And, that does so much of the lifting. There's this old adage that 80% of directing is casting.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that both Ryan Coogler and Paul Thomas Anderson had great casts. But that being said, I think Sinners was the significantly stronger script, the significantly better story. And therein I say, if it is even a debate at the end between these two films, then I could understand Paul Thomas Anderson getting the nod. Again, my biggest snub was Best Picture, and I think it should have gone to Sinners because I think this film would be timeless, and that's something we're going to get into in a moment. The importance of breaking the gender barrier in the best cinematography department for Autumn
Yeah.
Durald Archipel. Regardless of how people felt about Sinners, this is the one thing that came out from the night, and probably was like the best thing that came out from the night for a lot of people who have often been frustrated by the lack of representation for women, especially in technical departments like cinematography. I remember working with a cinematographer on one of the films that I directed, and she was a female. And I remember thinking, how the hell can I afford this person? She is so good. And I was surprised. Some of the best cinematographers that I know in Canada are women, and they're so good at it. But because so many of the technical grip department, lighting departments, best boy departments, all of these are men, there's often a thinking on the part of directors, producers that, well, they won't listen to a woman in this department. So seeing how Ryan Coogler expands that world, of access and opportunity. I've always thought about this. When you give somebody who has a big heart an opportunity, they will extend that opportunity to thousands of other people too. And that is why you should always want to champion people who have big hearts and come from a good place, because obviously I know people who went to AFI with Autumn. They are not doing this work. So much of what you can do as a cinematographer comes down to the set design, the budget, the camera you get to work with. Not every cinematographer is going to be given this opportunity. I, for one, am very, very proud and happy that not only was she the first woman to win it, she is the first woman of color to ever even be nominated for best cinematography, which is insane. So is it something that you feel is important? Because it is becoming more and more common, by the way. The best cinematography department, we are seeing more and more women in that department. Do you think it's something that is important? What is the importance of it to you?
I think it's so funny that our society as a whole, and particularly in the United States, as I say, I don't want to say American, because American is it's a continent. There's several branches of that. But in the United States in particular, there's been this conscientious movement from the people who are the ones that are in the most need of diversity and education and influence of other communities. They have been so just adamant that the worst we can do as a society is when we ingratiate ourselves with other cultures and other communities, meaning DEI, anything that has to do with race and theory and gender, and just like your affirming practices and your sexuality. And I think what has happened is that, again, us millennials, we were born to, like you were born in situations where, as somebody who was Slavic, you were spent a lot of time around African Americans. You spent a lot of time around people that were not like you, that were more American, white, and others. And so you had so many different people that influence your thinking. And I think when you are around people who are not like you, and they're telling stories from places that are different than the ones that you know of, not only does it enhance your work, but also you can see this beauty in the tapestry of the world at large. So for me, this is extremely significant, because and I've said this on Twitter, which has gotten an uproar all by itself, for Michael B. Jordan to be the sixth Black male to ever win Best Actor in the 98-year history of the Oscars is confounding. Because you think of all the great actors that you watched that are African American, you see the work that they've done. It just sounds ridiculous. It sounds crazy that that's the reality. And I think when you hear about Autumn and the work that she's done leading into this, and then you see the magistry and the control that she had over this movie, and the fact that she's able to create the parallels and the lanes and the motion, and that one scene that broke out of the movie after that, when I was watching it at the time, and then when I went on Twitter the next day, and you got a chance to see the guitar playing and how they just like weave through the eras of storytelling, from African American storytelling to Native American storytelling to Asian American storytelling. And you just went through all of these different things. And it's like, it takes a genius to be able to put music together like that, because it's one thing to have a song, but then to be able to play it out on screen, to be like, okay, we're actually going to take the audience through a journey, that this is why these vampires want this power. This is why they want the main protagonist, because they know that there's power in the music and power in storytelling, and you have the ability to bring things back to life. That's so important. So if Autumn doesn't have the ability to step into that role, or if she doesn't have the green light to step into that role, we never get that. So for me, Penn, what it really does is like how many opportunities and how much brilliance and chemistry and imagination and ingenuity, how much have we missed? Because there are other people that haven't been able to do that because they don't have the means, they don't have the connections. And so just think about how much better we would all be if more people like Autumn or Penn or Swipa got a chance to step into those roles to tell those stories. But there's just this classism that keeps us from doing it. So for me, it is uber important because Autumn, she's nothing but a door that leads into an even better future for all of us. So all of us can experience this together.
Ryan drew on so much experience from his uncle. He said like putting his uncle's story, on screen, that was very important to him. Obviously, it ties into so much American history. It ties into Motown. It ties into Elvis. It provokes, so many things about, the stuff about like how other minorities were used to hold down Black people. Like the specific, I was talking to people about this, even people who were really smart, and I was shocked. And I was like, man, I got to have a conversation with Swiper about this. The two Asian characters were never explicitly seen as bad characters or good characters. There was no morality assigned to them, but their role, if you understand the history, was obvious, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even the character walking across the street from the white store to the Black store, right? Mm-hmm. That to me is so significant. The fact that it was the Asian character who ultimately invites the vampires in, that to me was very interesting.
Because the greater injustice, like we have to get rid of these people now, or the city is going to fall. Or what's it about her husband for you that made it that powerful?
It made it powerful because there is this treasure of a artist in the center of this juke joint, right? Which is Preacher Boy. He has the power to conjure up the past, the future, the present, all of it together. He has a gift. Now, obviously, this juke joint is lent for the night by what we later find out is, spoiler alert, the Klan.
Yeah.
The Grand Dragon of the Klan.
Yeah.
And the vampires, in my opinion, represent the record labels. That's what they are. They're trying to take it and not give anything back. Right? So having this space that is entirely protected from all sides, even if it is only on borrowed time, and then to have the Asian character who is inside, who is the only non-Black character, who then invites everybody in, invites the vampires in, like, come in, because she's so torn up over her husband being taken. That to me was very symbolic. And the thing that I've learned watching Fruitvale, watching all of Ryan Coogler's filmography, there are no accidents. Everything is deliberate. Everything has a meaning that expands layers and layers and layers. And if people are willing to like sit with this film scene by scene, don't watch the whole film together. Watch the whole film together 2 times, but then go back and break down every single scene in 5-minute segments, 2-minute segments. You're going to see so many, the vultures, the symbolism. There's so much here. It's so deep. And I sometimes think that films suffer from a conceptual overload. They try to do too much. Interstellar is a great example of that type of film, by the way. A film that I think is a masterpiece, but maybe suffers from rushing past things, rushing over things that I wish would dig into more properly. It doesn't dig into completely. And this is a constant, frequent criticism from me for Christopher Nolan's work, is sometimes there's things that I wish that, his brain just goes into hyperdrive and he wants to deal with like 85 topics in one film. And it's just like, we want to deal with time travel. We want to deal with wormholes. We want to deal with, the father-daughter relationship, the scorned sibling. We want to deal with so much. And it feels like something always gets left. But in Sinners, we deal with 150 to possibly 500 years of American history, and nothing gets left. It's all properly dealt with. It's all sensibly and I think poetically presented to the audience to deal with what they want to. And I think that the best films that I've ever watched are the films that can appeal on 3 depths or 4 depths. If you talk to a casual observer, someone who doesn't view cinema the way you do, so doesn't engage with cinema as, deeply as you do, and ask them, what is Jaws? Like, what is Jaws to you? What defines Jaws to you? They'll say, you're going to need a bigger boat, right? That's what defines Jaws to you. Talk to a person who engages with cinema more deeply, more critically, who's watched Jaws 15, 20 times, and they'll probably talk to you that Jaws is about facing your fears, about inversion. And the line to me that encapsulates Jaws as a film is this line where Chief Brody is talking to Hooper.
Doesn't make any sense. When they pay a guy like you to watch sharks.
Doesn't make much sense for a guy who hates the water to live on an island either.
It's only an island if you look at it from the water.
You know what I mean? Like that to me is like
Yeah.
that's the film. That's what it's about. It's the monster, who's the real monster, that whole thing. But it's like and it's like the same thing with Jurassic Park. What is Jurassic Park really about? Is it about dinosaurs eating people? No, it's not. It's really about man playing God. And
Who's the real monster in Sinners then for you?
I think the real monster in Sinners is the vampires.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
See, because some people think it's a clan. It's deceitful too, right? But at least you know who they are.
But
right?
we didn't see
vampires that we don't know who they are. They present themselves as friendly and shit, and then they would just.
Do you think they had an argument? Do you think I think the way that why that was so why it wasn't a vampire movie and why it made it so impactful. And obviously, I want to shout out the cast that did that. I mean, Jack O'Connell was just terrific, obviously, in that role. He did a phenomenal job.
It's incredible.
I think they had a legitimate argument for why are you trying to do this? Like, forget these people. Like, you don't got to fight in this world for what? I will not reject you. I will not reject you. Now, it will be on my terms. So there's like this hierarchy that still exists there. But I will say, and maybe Pin, you'll push back on this. The hierarchy that he offered was very upfront. He didn't lie. He didn't deceive, because he said that you just join us. You don't got to worry about that. We'll play music forever. No one will ever stop us. I think on the other side, they made an agreement unknowingly with the clan, with a shady business owner who simply said, yeah, go ahead. You can take this property. No problem. And then next day they planned to pull up with these trucks and simply kill them and rob them again. And then just get the deed to the place and then just do it all over again with somebody else. For me, it was like, at least the vampires and Jack O'Connell in this incident, he was very direct. There was no misgivings about what I'm doing. Like, we are vampires. Now, I do have to suck your blood. You will become a part of our entourage, but you better believe there are no rankings here. Like, literally, you can do whatever you want, but we will just do it together. And I think on the other side of that is why at the end of the movie, I think it was so powerful that, like, with Smoke and Stack, when he showed back up and it's like, here comes this dude. He pulled out that Tommy gun. Like, he didn't even it wasn't even like that with the vampire. This was personal. You tried to rob me and my brother, and you deceived us. And remember, who told him, Penn? It was the vampires. He said that's what they're doing. They're trying to rob you. They didn't make a good faith agreement with you. We can go get them to Penn. We can get them together. I'll do it for you. All you got to do is join me.
Did they mention the part how you're never going to be able to see a sunset again?
I mean, but that's vampire. That's a part of being a vampire. That's a part of being a vampire. Would you be a vampire and live forever if you could? And then I can't see the sun. Whatever. Pin. No. By the time you get to 2050, there's going to be indoor sun. I'm gonna be a billionaire. I got indoor sun. I don't need to go outside.
I mean, it's so interesting that a film like Sinners, because it does not preach specifically to the audience and it does not force you to hold a perspective, that we could both enjoy the film as much as we did and come to completely different conclusions, which is great. And that's awesome about cinema. In the beginning, first few frames of the film, when Preacher Boy shows up completely beaten to the church, and we hear This Little Light of Mine, and he walks into the church and everybody's wearing white.
Yeah.
And we see vignettes and flashbacks, right, to the vampires. That to me is Ryan Coogler giving you the exact symbolism that this is what this represents. It's a trap. Everything is a trap. I think what he's showing is that
that's a good one.
That like life in the juke joint is the promise. Like we've talked about Sinners probably for like 25 to 30 minutes of this episode. We haven't even talked about the medicine side of it, like what they were trying to talk about, how spirituality was taken from African Americans as this is pagan, right? This is let's slap a label on it. Let's sell it to you. The plantation dollars, the whole debate about plantation dollars, that's symbolism right there too. There's so much symbolism, but for me, knowing the lived perspective of Ryan Coogler and what he stands for, having listened to hours and hours and hours, and knowing that he wrote this script, understanding him, listening to his interviews after, I think what he is trying to say is that, like, in the juke joint, in that moment, is the promise. Everything outside of it is the betrayal. Whether it be the vampires, whether it be the church, whether it be whatever, everything was a promise to take away something. And, you know, when we talk about like contributions of African Americans to American history, it is so expansive, it is so deep, it extends to science, literature, politics, it's everywhere. Glad that things are more out there and more talked about now, but still such a long way to go. But this hoodoo voodoo thing, you know, about like they had the right idea. Like the you know the natural the natural way to do things was the right idea. Even like the bluegrass versus blues thing, right? Like this is the greatest example to me of taking something that isn't yours, repackaging it, selling it back, and taking it from the people that it was originally from and saying, now you come buy it. It's happened in hip hop. It's happened in pop music. It's happened in everything. And I think it's so important to know that Ryan Coogler owns this film, that this is his film, that he wrote it, that he directed it. And that to me is what's missing. And you talked about earlier, like, you know, wouldn't it be great if there's more opportunities and all that stuff, right? Yeah, man. I wish that some of the films that were great ideas, great scripts were given $50 million, $100 million, but they weren't. They were given $800,000. Go make Fruitvale. $800,000, $900,000. Go make this with scraps, you know? And even that is like a generous offering or whatever. So I think that the money needs to flow into the right places. It needs to go to the best ideas just so we can have stories like this that explore things so deeply.
And you talked about something in particular here, Penn, that I think resonates with me personally, that I feel in my own life, and the tension I have felt in my own life, and the tension that I have experienced personally. The Black church is a central figure in Black culture in the United States. There's no way to separate the Black existence in the United States from the infrastructure of the Black church, because there's so much of who we are has been embedded in that culture, because they're synonymous with each other. And why I say that is Cornel West, in one of his books, you know, he said that the Black church exists in a perpetual state of crucifixion, meaning that we're always looking towards the eschaton, the moment that Jesus does come back, the celebration. So through the trauma and through the loss and through slavery and through Jim Crow, segregation, like we have our community and we celebrate each other and we celebrate our God, and our God will deliver us from evil, and us together we will rise. Again, a very communal faith. Whereas in a lot of white church settings, that's just not the way it exists. It's like your salvation, your relationship, your discipleship, your religion. But in the Black church, it is we are a part of this together. We exist in this together, in the safest place, which also was true for 1932 and before this, for Black people to reside, is in church, where our most educated could be themselves, where our women could be themselves, with our men could dress to the nine, the women could dress to the nine. You don't have to worry about people trying to hunt you down, spit on you, put dogs on you. You could be safe, you could be yourself, and you could sing and dance and music. So when Preacher Boy his father is telling him, hey, you need to be here. You can't go to the juke joint, because it's not just like the faith and religion side. This is home. This is where it's safe. This is where we can protect each other. You go to a juke joint, you're going to be around a bunch of demons and spirits, but also you're going to be left to the wolves. So I think the thing is that got me is that at the end of the movie, which is why I think this is where in our own theological journey, there has to be a better job of talking about existing in both the supernatural and the natural. Because at the end of the movie, when Preacher Boy went there and he said, hey, you come back here, you can't pick that guitar back up. That's such a robbery. First off, that's a lie from the devil, that my music has to be, and my gifts from God have to be only used in this platform, and I can never ever use my singing, my creativity in a way that is still pleasing to God outside of the church function. But that's a trap based on historic narratives and historic events that have led even the elders in our community to believe that. So what I'm saying is they had the best of intentions, but when Preacher Boy walks away, he's walking away from everything, because for him, this is who I am. And not only this is who I am, I just saw my music bridge the gap between our future, present, and our past. And I have a supernatural ability to do this thing. And there's no way you're going to take this away from me. But that's what happens. And you see this loss that he even goes through in order to go on the journey of being himself. And I think that was such a great little like side story that was being told from the start of the film to the end of the film. And I think even that kind of stuff, man, you got to be tapped in. You got to be tapped into Black culture and Black history to be able to understand that and to get that. And then from the Asian stores of in the Black city, that is an understanding that, especially in Oklahoma, in Greenville, and other places like this historically, Asians did business in Black spaces because they could, but a lot of them existed separately from Black people because they thought they were better. And so then there was always this dynamic, like you see 1990s in LA when the Korean woman shot the Black girl in the back of the head at 14 years old. That's also like tying into these racial like issues that have existed even between us and the Asian and Korean community. So it was just like, it was perfect. It was perfect. And you saw where the analogous responses between the communities, and you saw them working together. There was just a buy-in, man. And I just think that for me was so important. There was a historical buy-in. There was the 1/8 rule with Haley Steinfeld's character that she's passing as white, even though she's Black, but yet she is married to a white man, but yet she's still Black, and she's in love with somebody a part of this community, but she can never be with this person because they both would get ostracized for their relationship. I mean, brother, like,
I mean,
it was a historical masterpiece.
This stuff is happening even in the world. Like Trevor Noah talked about his parents, and he was like, this was my parents' life in South Africa. So
yeah, it's
not like, you know, sometimes we live in America, or we live in Canada, we think this is only happening here. And it's like, this is world over, brother. Like, this is everywhere. This is like in China. This is happening in Japan. This is happening in India. This is happening everywhere. But I think, you know, to the point of like the Asians, I think so many times when I listen to somebody try to lump bucket people, I always resent that personally. I don't think that, I mean, as much as I think identity is a construct, it is a construct that people believe in very strongly. And so if you're from Nigeria, or if you're from Ghana or whatever, there's not necessarily fun being put in the same bucket as someone from Jamaica. And I certainly don't believe that we should be putting every single person who's not white into the not white bucket, because that's where we fall into the trap of divide and conquer, right? So the concept of like Asian people doing business in Black neighborhoods, well, that was precisely because what was the loans? What was the interest on those loans like, right? And you brought up this very salient point, which was that the Black dollar in America spends less time in the Black community than any other dollar. And I think Ryan Coogler is hitting on that. And I think he's hitting on it in a very poetic way by not actually harping on it, but administering it as part of like the collective understanding of the story within the two characters, I think the Chows. And it's like knowing that they are not white and they do business in the Black community, but knowing that this Asian couple now has access to also the white community, which the Black community does not have access to, giving them a disproportionate advantage, not only on pricing, on interest, probably on rent, right? Is a way to basically drain money out of the Black community, put it into the Asian community. And it's like, it's just one more way, subconsciously, subtly, manipulatively, you know, on a systemic level, systemically, to make sure that if we have Indian minorities, Arab minorities, Chinese minorities, Korean minorities, we're still going to make sure that we somehow elevate them above the Black community.
Let me ask you this: what did the theme of romance play for you in Sinners? Because you had obviously Stack and Annie, you had Smoke and Mary, and then you had let me make sure I get their names correctly. The Asian couple was Grace and Chayton, I believe. none of them had happy endings. Or let me actually say like
Great
this:
Grace and
the
Bo. So it was Grace and
Grace
Bo.
and Bo, Grace and
Mhm.
Bo. They didn't have remember Stack and Mary or Stack and Annie couldn't be together for different reasons. Smoke and Annie couldn't be together for different reasons. And then you see the break between the married couple that start off the movie really well, that obviously have a child and stuff as well. Like for me, even like those compartmentalized stories also talk about the influence of the time that they exist in. And I think for Stack and for Smoke, for different reasons, they had to be away from their heart in some way, because there were certain things they had to do, certain things they had to pursue, people they felt like they had to become before they could either get back to it or never get back to it, which would be Stack and Annie's situation in particular.
I think it was came back to like protecting,
Mm-hmm.
you know, protecting something that you love by walking away from it. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
like that's something straight out of like the Bible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you gotta sacrifice, you gotta suffer, you gotta suffer, you gotta suffer, you know? And I think so much of sometimes like, I mean, you're I don't know. We've never talked about you being religious or not religious. I've certainly had extreme religious swells in my life, and then moments where I'm not so connected to the church.
Mm-hmm.
But I think sometimes religion can be a great way to connect you to your community. It could be a great way to bring you back into perspective in terms of, you know, how expansive and how large this universe is in terms of like your place in it. It keeps you, it's like a natural check against inflated ego in some ways, right? So religion can be very beautiful in that way. But sometimes it can also be used to keep people down. It can, you know, sometimes historically, you know, in other countries, sometimes it has been used to suppress people's own frustrations with their suffering, with the promise of an afterlife or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, you know? And I think, you know, just how brilliantly relationships, the church, the vampires, all of this stuff. I tell you, a lesser director would have been completely confounded with this type of payload. Like to hammer home any one of these points in a single film is a brilliant thing. To hammer home
Yeah.
all of them, to me, um, you know, anyways, this is like it's great to talk about this stuff. I think we've touched on a lot of stuff. I think I already know this, but I wanna get your best pick. First of all, I wanna get your moment of the night. What was your moment of the night? What is that one moment where it's like Swiper is thinking about the Oscars 2025 in 2050? That's a moment that stuck out for you.
It's probably gonna be the actual live song that they had. Um, you know, when they played "I Lied to You" in a live audience, and you know the fact that we got a chance to see them actually do that in person. And
Mm.
then you get Misty Copeland, for her to come out of retirement post injury and to be able to play and to dance in front of everyone. And then, like I said, you got in person, you got the actors on stage that had played the parts. They got a chance to live it out in front of an audience. And then you gave the opportunity for Preacher Roy himself to show his skills.
You believe he's
Jack,
21?
yeah, it's crazy how young he is.
He was 19 when they shot the film. Can't believe he's so talented. Sheesh.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see what his future is going to hold for him, man. And I mean, all of them, like I said, like everybody just they got back involved in the actual, like, and that's rare. That honestly, that is something that doesn't happen often, that actors want to go back and play into a part again on stage. The last time I saw that happen to this degree was probably Les Miserables in 2012 at the Oscars. All of them, Anne Hathaway, everybody, they got on stage and they sang their parts and did their roles and stuff, all that, and for everything. So Amanda Seyfried, all of them. So that's probably going to be the most memorable thing, is that we had such a great song that told the story of the movie so well that it became a central theme for the Oscars.
Yeah, I think it's between that and obviously the aforementioned Michael B. Jordan winning Best Actor, and just that incredible swell of emotion that I felt for him. Um, I think the speech for like the best documentary was also
Yeah.
very good. Like losing your country and stuff. I thought that was like a very, without being overtly political, I think it was very deeply human. How someone can lose their country. I thought that was
Isn't it fascinating, though, Penn? This is the thing about movies. it's so everything is political, and I don't mean that from like a pure politics standpoint. All the decisions that they make as directors and actors especially directors and creators, it's all political. Because for the people in Iran, it's literally impossible for me to tell the story without talking about the harm of it. Or what was the documentary that won for the school shootings? Do you remember that one? The name
Sandy
of it?
Hook?
No, it was All the Empty Rooms.
Oh shoot! Yes. The 4 empty rooms.
What
Yes.
do you mean? It's no way for me not to get political when this is involving children. You know what I mean? But they won, and that was a terrific. I thought that speech was phenomenal, and I you would hope that the people watching it would learn. But I think that's the other side of this too. Is like, as horrifying as things are, if it doesn't make enough money, the people in power, they're not going to make the decision to make a change. And I think that movie and documentary in itself was a revolution, and I think an ode to the truth and reality that there's something more sacred than even just the movie itself, but like protecting people. You know what I mean? So I thought that's what I'm saying. I thought this Oscars had so much depth to it when it came to the people actually doing the work.
Absolutely. I think I know the answer to a lot of these, but I know your best director pick was Ryan Coogler. I think your best film, you were split between the two.
Yeah.
Who was your best actor and best actress pick?
Yeah, so I had picked beforehand Michael B. Jordan. I thought that he was going to win. I thought that was great. I had then picked Emma Stone from Begonia, but then Jessie Buckley won everything before this. She was 4-4, so it made sense for her to be 5 of 5. And if you watch Hamnet, she was also phenomenal in that movie as well. So again, no pushback there.
Yeah, my picks were Ryan Coogler, Michael B. Jordan, Sinner. For director. So it was director Ryan Coogler. Again, I can see Paul Thomas Anderson, but I would have picked Ryan Coogler. I would have picked Sinners. I would have picked Michael B. Jordan, and I would have picked Rose Byrne. So those were my 4 picks. What is the film you were most likely to rewatch 5 times? This can be pretty fast. Oh my gosh.
Heavy movies are tough for me, brother. Maybe K-pop Demon Slayer.
Okay.
You know, it's really, really hard for me to watch heavy movies or great movies like constantly.
No, I understand that. Like, I think, I've watched 2001: A Space Odyssey more than 5 times, so I'm pretty sure I'll watch Sinners at least 5 times. I know I've watched Sinners already twice, so having 3 more is very likely. But apart from Sinners, what is a film that I could see myself watching 5 times? Nothing. I don't know, man.
Nothing else on there?
5
Have you seen
times?
Hamnet yet? Have you seen Hamnet?
I have.
You didn't. You're not like a.
Oh, I liked it, man.
Okay.
Hamnet is great. Frankenstein was great. I mean, I've watched Pan's Labyrinth 3 times.
Yeah, great freaking movie.
So maybe Frankenstein will get to 5 in my lifetime. But in terms of like films, I found myself watching over and over again. In fairness, they're not usually they're not necessarily deep or not deep. I've watched The Dark Knight more times than I can remember. I have watched Man on Fire with Denzel Washington more times than I can remember. I have watched Jurassic Park more times than I can remember. So it tends to be like these big action blockbuster type of films as well. In terms of like Fruitvale, I watched Fruitvale, one of my favorite all-time movies. I watched it twice. I don't think I can sit through that shit the 3rd time because it's just like I can't keep putting my heart through that. It's hard to know, first of all, walking into that film exactly how it's going to end, and then to watch it actually happen and knowing how well he portrayed it, and then to keep watching it, that just feels like torture. A lot of people went and watched Sinners 3, 4, 5 times just because there's so much you miss on the first watch. So you watch it a second time. It is fun enough. That's why I say it's fun enough. The package is fun enough, even though the topic is deeply emotionally scarring, heavy, and traumatic. There's enough fun in it. There's enough action in it. There's enough jokes in it. There's enough, music, vibrant cinematography.
Yeah, I think for me, rewatches. So my favorite movies ever off the top of my head are Glory with Denzel. It's going to be after that. Schindler's List is going to be up there somewhere. Freedom Riders used to be high on that list. I love that movie. I mean, even Godfather #1 is up there. I mean, there's some other Al Pacino movies that are very high on the list. Like Goodfellas is obviously another incredible movie. I love those types, but the movies I rewatched the most are like going to be like Marvel, action, superpower type things, just because that's so like the latency is just way lower. You know what I mean? It just doesn't require as much for me, you know, emotionally to tap in with this, you know, because to your point, if I know I got to emotionally be ready to handle, like, I don't want to watch The Boy with Striped Pajamas, you know, constantly. I'm just not going to do that. Like, you know what I mean? Like
I think Schindler's List and Boy with Striped Pajamas are like a different type of like torture, right? Because there's a very bleakness to it, right? And I think, you know, even some Terrence Malick films are like up there, you know, when I think about that.
The Pianist is a phenomenal movie, by the way. I'm not going to watch that more than I have.
Pianist I've watched twice. I find it a little bit hard to watch Polanski films now.
Ooh, what was the war movie? What was it, 1927? Do you remember that one that came out a couple years ago? That's another one. Like
it's interesting. Like 2001: A Space Odyssey, I remember watching in the theaters a few years ago. It's just so interesting to me. Like Stanley Kubrick never won a Best Director. Alfred Hitchcock never won Best Director.
Yeah.
When you think about like how many times the Academy has gotten this award wrong, go look, like, to anyone out there who watches this, go look at the list of people who've won Best Director, not taking anything away.
Yeah.
98% of them don't hold a candle to David Lynch, Stanley Kubrick, and a lot of the other directors who haven't won. Leone never won. Akira Kurosawa never won. Like, there's so many directors who've never been celebrated. So, you know, like, you don't want to get it wrong, is what I'll say. Right? Because you never know. You never know. Like, look, man, Ryan Coogler had this interview after Sinners where he was asked, I think it was on the Carmelo Anthony podcast, and he's like, oh, like, is this the best movie you ever made? And he's like, that's for y'all to decide. Like, every single time I made a movie, it's the best one that I could make. It's the one that I could tell the truth. I'm like, that's a great perspective. You don't want to get too high on your own supply. And I have no doubt that his next movie is probably going to be even better than Sinners, because that's just who he is. He's like a constantly expanding supernova of a director.
Bro,
we don't know.
I just looked up, like, you know, I was thinking about robbery years, or not robbery, but like historical years. So, you know, Leonardo DiCaprio famously has only won once, right? And that was for The Revenant. I think that was like 2015 or something like that. Yep. Do you realize that, like, when he made The Aviator, which is a phenomenal film, like 3 hours of beauty, that same year, Johnny Depp had Finding Neverland, Clint Eastwood had $1 Million Baby, Don Cheadle had Hotel Rwanda, and Jamie Foxx won for Ray. So I think for me, the years that I remember people not winning Oscars, I'm like, I have to remind myself of, like, oh man, like, hey, Will Smith, you didn't win for, like, you know, $1 Million Baby and all that other stuff. Or Terrence Howard didn't win for Hustle and Flow, or Joaquin Phoenix didn't win for Walk the Line. Heath Ledger didn't win for Brokeback Mountain in 2006, which I think is like a phenomenal movie. Leonardo DiCaprio, and I remember this year, the year that Leo lost for Blood Diamond and Will Smith lost for Pursuit of Happiness, is when Forrest Whitaker dropped The Last King of Scotland, dog. Sometimes years just be like that, where it's just like, you know, you thought that, like, man, this is the best movie I've ever made. Any other year, I'm winning, I'm walking away. And then Forrest Whitaker's like, boo! Last King of Scotland, like, perfect movie. And I think the Oscar also thinks about it like this too, Ben. Are you more likely to be here next year than the other person? And I think absolutely they will give somebody an Oscar if they think they've either paid their dues, like when Denzel won for Training Day, which I don't think is a top 5 Denzel movie, or when Forrest Whitaker won, like, this is an elite movie, but Leo's going to be back here and Will Smith is going to be back here. We'll pay them back in blood.
What's Denzel's best performance?
That's so tough, man, because there's so many different options. He was terrific in The Great Debaters. Man on Fire, even though it's an action movie, I know how people feel about that. Like John Q 2002 was exceptional. Antoine Fisher as a supporting role. Manchurian Candidate, Out of Time was crazy. Book of Eli, again, another action movie, but he was actually terrific in Book of Eli. And then obviously Glory, he won for Best Supporting Actor in 1989. I mean, it's probably Malcolm X in 1992. And so
Malcolm X was incredible. I think he was great in Flight. Incredible in Flight. He disappeared into that role. Movie. I mean, it was just incredible. You didn't even mention He Got Game.
That's another one. Yeah,
incredible. I mean, I think Training Day was great. I think Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3 was really good. I think.
But bro, look at the year he lost for Malcolm X, which I still think he should have won. Robert Downey Jr. played Chaplin that year. Clint Eastwood did Unforgiven, but that's when Al Pacino basically went all the way left and did Sin of a Woman. Even though I think Denzel was the best, but I also think they were paying back Al Pacino for Godfather.
Yeah, I can see it. I think like it's so insane to me how many masterpieces he has as an actor. Not necessarily like one thing I could say, if Denzel is in a film, Denzel is probably gonna be the best part of that film. That's like I dare you to name an example.
Gladiator 2. I don't think he was the best part of that film, unfortunately.
That's the only example. The Pelican Brief. Like
movie.
you know, like there's an example. He owns everything. So it's just like, oh, such a powerful actor. Okay. Did any of these films make your top 10 all time?
Sinners is probably going to be up there. I'll probably have to rewatch it again and just like allow myself to sit in it. Sinners is probably going to make the list. One Battle After Another is not going to be. It's probably going to be close to top 30 if I actually did a list. But Sinners is the only one that's more than likely that's going to make that list. But then, like I said, if I break it out to like cartoons as well, K-pop Demon Hunters is probably going to make it near that level in terms of cartoon movies. But Sinners would be the one.
Yeah, my top 10 list has been impenetrable for years. It's like a very select group of films, and I like do not give a shit that it's new or this is new. Like it's been cemented for so long, and you know, films like No Country for Old Men, as much as I loved Wind River, as much as I loved, you know, so many films that I've watched recently, can't touch No Country for Old Men in that genre, right? 2001: A Space Odyssey, untouchable, right? Like the mastery, the patience, the persistence, the cinematography, the you know, the ability to scan, you know, all of it. So yeah, like Sinners is the first film in 5 years that I could say has actually entered my top 10. And it might just enter in at 5 or 4. It is truly remarkable. And I'm not really a big musical guy. I understood Les Miserables was an incredible film. I know that, you know, Chicago, you know, Moulin Rouge, like a lot of these things, I know that they're incredible films, but they weren't necessarily for me per se. Maybe it's something that I'm getting a little bit older. I'm getting more open to musicals. I know Pendance, we programmed a musical for like only the 3rd time this year. So that was interesting. But yeah, I mean, just the way that it was told, the number of things. And the beautiful thing is, because I watched it late, I only watched it like 3 months ago. So for me, I'll have way more thoughts about Sinners a year from now. And I just can't wait for it to kind of explode in my mind. And final one is film most likely to be seen as legendary in 20 years. Again, in the moment, we miss things, right? Just like seasons in basketball, football. I'm sure there are seasons that in the moment feel like, oh, he did a great thing, but I don't really know. But then you give it 20 years of time, with the gap of time and perspective, new perspectives emerge about what that really meant. Russ's triple-double streak. How will it be seen? Michael Jordan's scoring records. How will it be seen? The three-peat and then the second three-peat. We had a very different perspective of Michael Jordan in 1994 than we do in 2026, right? It's the same thing with LeBron, you know, in 2016. So I think about the standing the test of time test. Here's a fun fact. 2001: A Space Odyssey was not nominated for Best Picture. It is widely considered one of the 10 greatest films of all time. What is the film for you that is most likely to be seen as legendary in 20 years? Is there a film that you're just like, oh, this is going to age like fine wine, or this is going to age not so well?
Well, let me ask you this directly, because this is probably going to be the bar. Will Sinners be viewed higher 10 years from now or 14 years from now? Will Sinners be viewed higher in 2040 than Django is in 2012 and 2026? That's probably going to be like where my bar goes. Django is now revered more than even it was at that point in time. But will it get to that level with Django? Possibly.
Yeah,
that's my question.
I think it will. I think when a film is this great, all you need to do is get eyeballs onto it. Now, however you get eyeballs onto it, oh, it's a horror film, oh, it's a vampire film, oh, it's a musical, look at this medley, look at the beautiful cinematography, 16 Oscars, record breaker. People who didn't watch it the first time around are going to watch it now. And for me, 1 out of every 10 people who are going to watch this is probably going to change their life. You know this as a content creator. You have your day ones, the realist, right? I've adhered to a rule for my entire life, whether it comes to basketball, whether it comes to basketball writing, whether it comes to film. If you have 1,000 people that love you, you will never starve. 1,000 people that love you, that buy everything you do, that love you, support you, care about you, will defend you against backlash, whatever. You got 1,000 of those people in your life, in your orbit, whether it be across the pond, across the world, whatever, you're good. A lot of people just have followers. They don't really have supporters. I think 2001: A Space Odyssey has ardent supporters.
Mhm.
There are people who will battle. There are people 50 years after that film was made, more than 50 years after that film was made, by the way, still technically freaking brilliant. Like, you could tell me that film was made yesterday and it still technically holds up the test of time. Star Wars, Jurassic Park. These films have like communities built around them. There are people who to this day are uncovering new facts, still debating these films. Then there are films that are a blip in time. They're cool for a year and then people kind of forget it. A good example is Crash. Crash is a great example of a film. Traffic is another
yeah.
one.
Crash aged out because of the the particularity with the sexual assault and the police and all that kind of stuff. I think people just got like that trope. It's so hard for people to look by that now, like that happened, and even if he became a hero in the end,
Yeah, I think
Another slept on movie in that same era, by the way, Collateral. What was it? Collateral with Jamie Foxx and Tom Cruise at that point. That's another movie that was just like, it's completely underrated.
Oh, absolutely. There was another one, Changing Lanes.
Changing Lanes was exceptional.
That's Samuel L. Jackson and Ben Affleck.
Mhm.
I mean, there are so many films that get kind of slept on, but like, I don't know if you know this, but on April 15th, it's called National Canada Film Day here. And every single year, the National Canadian Film Board will reach out to festivals like ours and, other organizations and say, pick a film to celebrate. And every single year, I just get to pick a film that's Canadian, that happens to be Canadian, that I watched when I was young, that I want to celebrate. 2 years ago, we picked J'ai tout ma mère by Xavier Dolan, which is I Killed My Mother, which was his directorial debut. Last year, we picked Copenhagen by Mark Rosso, who is a dear friend of mine. And this year, God willing, they're going to let us do it. We're going to pick Hummel by a completely obscure director. And anytime I talk to cinephiles in the city, they don't know that this film even exists. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, it's something like that film connected with me, that character connected with me. And 20 years ago, when I have an opportunity to shine light on a film, that's the film I'm going to pick. And, people are laughing because they're just like, man, it's Canadian Film Day. Why are you picking an Indian film? And it's like, it's a Canadian film, dude. That's the country we live in, right? Like we got diverse voices here. And I think for whatever reason, this film just didn't get publicity in 2007. Maybe it can find a new audience today. That's the beautiful thing about film. That's the beautiful thing about, some of the content creation that we do. If you do video essays online, whether you do writing, whether you write books, whether you make music, is like, you don't know when your work will finally find an audience, but it can. I think Sinners will continue to find audiences everywhere it goes. I think more and more people will look at this film as being ahead of its time. And I think the number of people that were inspired by some element of this, be it the music, be it the cinematography, be it, the double use of the character, Smoke and Stack, and how Michael B. Jordan broke so many technical barriers to do it.
Yeah.
I think it is going to be seen as, I don't want to say it's going to be 2001: A Space Odyssey, where everyone is going to be trying to mimic it for the next 50 years. Maybe it won't have that kind of staying power, but I think it's going to have something like that, where it's going to be the origin story. Sinners is going to be the origin story for like 50 other great films. And I think every time one of those films pays homage to Sinners, we're going to shine light back to Sinners. And 20, 30, 40 years from now, I think people are going to recognize Sinners as one of the 50 greatest films of all time. And the fact at that point, I think my kids' will have to ask my kids or me, if I'm super old and gray at that point, yo, Grandpa, how the hell did Sinners not win Best Picture that year?
Yeah, Ryan Coogler, if he keeps this up, it's gonna be looked at like weird that like he didn't win Best Director for that one. I'll say, I think another film that's gonna be lost, it's kind of lost in like immediate time, but in the future, I think will be considered like one of the better ones. I think the Creed movies are also like
so good.
They're better than people are giving it credit for, especially the first one. Like, I just don't think people realize, like, he walked into an all-time, he and I mean this, he walked into an all-time great series and did the best movie of any of the movies in the series. He's did the best. Creed 1 is better than any of the previous 5 Rockies from top to bottom. storytelling,
Previous
acting.
5.
Yeah,
Okay.
previous
Gotcha.
5. It's better than any of the previous 5 that have walked. Now, to be fair, Sylvester Stallone, he had to bankroll a lot of that himself. So like I'm not trying to like, that's obviously there's difficulties for him as on the producing side and the acting side. But for him to be able to walk into that series. Oh, and then by the way, Judas and the Messiah is another one that doesn't get love. That movie is terrific. So this is what I'm telling you. Coogler is like, he's 38, 39.
Yeah, I think he's 38 or 39. Or
He'll be 40 this year. He'll be 40 this year in May. Yeah, bro. He's not even at his peak yet when it comes to like intellect and control. Not even close.
I think because of how well Sinners did at the box office, now we will get hopefully, we will get the Christopher Nolan
$100 million, 120, 150.
Yeah, because Sinners had a $90 million budget. I think it returned to 370, and it's going to gross even more now on Blu-ray, and people are going to want to emblemize it, or they're going to want to canonize it, or have the physical media of it. It's going to continue to make some money. So I hope over its lifetime it is able to net 500 million. And this is another important reason why people need to go to the cinema, because when you go to the cinema, you are voting with your dollars. Right? When you go in, and I'm not even saying support it, because I think there's like some weird connotation with the word support, as if like you're no, support yourself. Go watch Sinners. But when you go to the cinema and watch Sinners, what you are doing is you are opening up a way for Ryan to go to a production and say, I want to make a space movie, or I want to direct the next Marvel movie, or whatever he wants to do, right? And they could hand him a $200 million check, $300 million check, the way they do with Christopher Nolan, and say, go do your shit, because you are proving that you are not going to lose us money. And at the end, it's going to come down to money.
Yeah, he got $200 million for for Black Panther, but again, context, y'all, like he got that because it's him, but also it was Marvel. Like that was Marvel was trying to put together, because Marvel, what they haven't done is they have not told Black like cartoon stories well. So they had learned from Spawn, they learned from some other things, and then they saw some failures that had happened with DC with Green Lantern and stuff. They literally said, bro, we failed with the Hulk, we almost dropped the ball with Thor, Iron Man saved us, Iron Man 3 lost us a little bit, we have to nail Black Panther. They gave him $200 million, and I think I can argue, of the standalone superhero movies, Black Panther is at the worst in the top three. So I think he proved himself 8 years ago with that film, and then he reproved himself since that point with the Black Messiah. But again, that's a Black film, and you got to tell it like from a white lens in some way, and like, you know what I mean. Then he proved himself with Creed, but then he wrote something brand new, created something brand new, put a cast together, and delivered the best movie of 2025 off his own back that he owns. This is a different step in like your legacy. Like now it's like I can do $200 million movies by myself without Marvel.
Absolutely. And I think that I could do $1 billion movie with Marvel too.
Matter of fact, you give me James Cameron money for an Avatar, you give me 10 years of runway, I can get $1 billion done.
And you look at the impact that Tyler Perry has had on the industry. Imagine now Ryan Coogler will have that, on his side. And it's just like, once again, you want to support good people doing good shit. And you want to support people with that generous spirit to actually extend the ladder down to everyone who comes after them, right? There's a lot of people in this world, Swipa, that they take the ladder up and they kick it on the way up. They're like, I made my money. Fuck everybody else. I really have a soft spot in my heart for people who are willing to take the ladder up, and they carry 16 people on their back, go up the ladder. And then you know what they do when they get up to the top floor? They build a new ladder. And they build another ladder. And then after a while, they build an elevator. And I love that for him. And I love that for, at some point, I tell you, Michael B. Jordan is going to be a director, man. He's going to be a director, probably in his 50s. He's going to be directing films. He's going to be producing films.
What's his next step? What's Michael's next step, you think, from here?
I think his greatest gift is acting, obviously. But now, when you look at
movies, you want him to do
anything he wants. anything that comes from his lived experience, anything that comes from his heart, whatever he wants to tell. He's a great storyteller. I don't think it's possible to be a great actor the way he is. And you know what's interesting is like, you know, Ryan was describing like directing Michael B. Jordan, but then Michael B. Jordan had a twin and he had to direct him.
Mm-hmm.
So in a lot of ways, Sinners was on the job training for Michael B. Jordan to become a director as well. And this is something that he's been talking about like for 15 years now, because he was, you know, as you know, like on The Wire and everything. Like he's been talking about like producing, directing, like he's got big plans. And I loved, you know, when he said this thing, he said, you know, I'm built different. He had this interview where he said, yeah, I'm sure you've seen it. Like he's like, I'm built different. When people were going out, I was like, nope, I'm gonna work. I'm gonna keep working. I'm gonna get my people right. I'm gonna get my team right. I'm gonna, you know, do it for everybody so that I can enjoy the second half of my life. And I think for him, there's a lot of pressure because, you know, like he's an actor and, you know, maybe that's like not challenging enough for him. But I think the cool thing about people like Ryan and the people like Michael and the people like Paul Thomas Anderson and a lot of the people that we've talked about today is they're always looking for the next challenge, the next step, the next evolution. They're always looking for that next failure because it is through their failures that they find success. So I'm looking forward to the next, you know, I pray, man, because there's so many people, yo, like I thought about Kobe Bryant, you know, when I was watching Sinners and I was thinking about like all the hopes that I have for Ryan Coogler right now, all the hopes that I have for Michael B. Jordan. It reminds me, you know, of hopes that I've had for other people in my life, hopes that I had for my friend Robert Cormier, hopes that I had for Kobe Bryant. You know, when I saw Dear Basketball, I was like, oh man, he's about to get into filmmaking and he's such an advocate for the women's sport and he's such an advocate for giving back to the next generation. Kobe Bryant, we haven't seen anything yet, you know, and then he's gone, right? So you just pray, you know, is like you say, protect this person at all costs, protect Ryan Coogler at all costs, right? Protect Michael B. Jordan at all costs, protect all these artists at all costs and fund them.
Yeah, I'm glad that like we have our generation's version of Robert De Niro. You know what I mean? Where Robert De Niro doesn't matter the generation, doesn't matter how many times it's happened, doesn't matter the movie, doesn't matter any of that. You know, Martin and Robert, they will be doing movies together through their 70s and 80s. And I'm glad that like Ryan and Michael have such a relationship that, Lord willing, it stays healthy, which it's only getting stronger. This is going to be this, you know, for the next 45 years, we're going to be able to get films from these two, Lord willing, where they're just putting out masterpieces. And so then think about it, what it changes to in your 40s, what it changes in your 50s, what it changes in your 60s. You know, that's going to be the great part about like growth and development from all of them. So I'm excited, man.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Swiper, this has been a great conversation. We initially said 30 to 40 minutes, but then of course, you know, when two people who are really passionate about cinema get into it, you know, it ends up being 2 hours. So I'm going to have a hell of a time trying to edit this down and maybe release it in like 2-3 parts. Where can the people find you? We're going to put your thing up here. Obviously, you know, look, man, you've been talking about this for a while. Every single show, every other show we have, you mentioned something about we got to start a film podcast. I want to, you know, and then I think I caught, I don't know if it was like you saying it or you tweeting it at some point in another life. You know, it could have been a film critic or something like that, or a film reviewer. And I was just like, why in another life? It feels like you know, like it feels like you're really passionate about this. And I think, you know, to the people who know our basketball conversations, this is the most peaceful 2-hour conversation we have ever had in our lives. So this is like, we should always talk about cinema.
Yeah, look, I always think there's unity in storytelling, and I think that there's something, you know, beautiful about all this stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely will do it more. You know, I think the hard part about, I feel in some ways, in a much different way. I won't say lesser because then I would diminish myself, and I just don't believe you should do that. You know, I wouldn't do that to you. I wouldn't do it to anybody else. I wouldn't do it to myself. I think finding ways to grow, like very similar to Coogler and B. Jordan, they want to challenge themselves. I constantly am challenging myself, whether it's sports, NBA, NFL, whether it's college, whether now it's politics, now film. You know, I do want to continue to find out how I can continue to give to the world. And I think, you know, film is just such a brilliant avenue that has affected me so deeply as a human being. And so I think even today's conversation has just been like so refreshing to like, you know, because when you're talking sports, it's like even between all of us, it's like competition. This is more so about, I think, really just celebrating the highs and then not even critiquing the lows, but just like, you know, what would I have done differently thing. And I think there's just such a healthy perspective you can have when it comes to like talking about film and television, you know?
Absolutely. And I think film whether it be through criticism, whether it be through praise, will often bring people together. And I think like the clash of ideas can be really, really great. And obviously, you know, we've had like a very passionate discussion about Sinners here. It could be like its own episode at this point, is like Swipe and Pen break down Sinners and like what they liked about it.
Yeah.
I don't remember talking one thing I didn't like about it, because there really isn't very much that I didn't like about it. It is a standalone masterpiece, and I can't wait to see what some of these filmmakers do next. We obviously didn't get to talk a lot about like editing and all these departments and whatever, but man, I tell you, as someone who's worked on a film set, who's worked as an assistant director, a director, a cinematographer, I've done a lot of stuff on film. It really takes a village, man. And when you
Yeah.
talk about these bigger sets, like when you talk about Pan's Labyrinth, when you talk about Avatar, when you talk about Terminator, like I sometimes like, you know, we watch films and go to the theater and the credits roll, right? The coolest thing is there's like 80% of people get up.
hmm
They start like looking for the coat, sifting off the popcorn off their shirt. Me, when I didn't make films, I tell you, I used to get up.
hmm
After making films, I stay seated because the
Mhm.
movie is not over.
hmm
All those people, that entire makeup department, that entire casting department, the special effects, every person, every one of those people had like a 300-hour job that you
Mhm.
do not understand. You know, every one of those people work for 6 months. It takes a real village to make a film. It's a deeply collaborative art form. Yeah, man. I hope you do more of this stuff. Maybe it won't be with me, but maybe one day I'm gonna look up and you know you're gonna have your own podcast. You know,
Yeah.
talking about film. I think you know it's really cool. I actually got into basketball podcasting because someone saw one of my articles and said, "Would you like to come on?" And I was
Yeah.
like, "I'm not a podcaster," and that was 2020.
hmm
I'm not a podcaster. I'm not gonna be on camera. And then boom, you know, now I'm doing it. Right. So I've never
hmm
done a film review, Oscar review type of podcast. This is a first for both of us, I think.
hmm
So this is very cool.
Yeah.
Hey
It was
man,
a lot
if
of
Bill
fun.
Simmons can do it, we can do it. Come on.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, Netflix show 2 years from now. Yeah, it's definitely possible.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Swipa, thanks so much. People can catch Swipa. Where can they find you?
Man, everywhere, bro. Literally, you just Google Swipa, I'll come up. So yeah, wherever you want to find me, wherever you don't want to find me, don't Google Swipa. That's literally that simple.
That is a fact. All right, Swipa, thank you so much for coming on. Hope our audience got a lot out of this conversation, man.